When Undercover Boss saw a woman baking morning buns at 5 a.m., Jackson Reeves stood in front of the motel mirror, eyes hollow from too many late nights and too much thinking. The man looking back at him didn't look like the CEO of a nationwide bakery chain. He looked tired, average. That was exactly the point. The pepper gray beard, worn jeans, discount sweatshirt, and old baseball cap, all part of the disguise. To the world, he was Evan, a corporate trainee. To himself, he was a man desperate for answers. 15 years ago, Jackson had sold everything he owned to open the first Golden Harvest bakery, slept on flour sacks, burned his hands in ovens, scrubbed toilets. But success came like yeast in warm dough, slow, persistent, then suddenly unstoppable. 37 locations now, a Forbes feature, a sleek condo in San Francisco. But things weren't rising like they used to. Profits were dipping, employee turnover up, and Seattle's flagship store, the company's crown jewel, was barely breaking even. Consultants and analysts gave him charts, buzzwords, and nothing useful. So, like his father used to say, if the bread's going stale, get your hands in the flour. He left the motel before 4 a.m., the Pacific Northwest air sharp and damp. As he parked a few blocks away, the city still slept, but the lights in the bakery window glowed warm. Odd, shift start wasn't until 5. He walked closer. Through the glass, he saw her. A woman stood at the prep table, auburn hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, her arms moved with grace and muscle memory, rolling, folding, shaping morning buns with a kind of care he hadn't seen in years. She didn't glance up, didn't hesitate. It was like watching a musician play an instrument they built themselves. At exactly 5 a.m., the door buzzed open. A tall man with a neat haircut and a relaxed, worn-in smile greeted him. "You must be Evan, new guy from corporate, yeah?" Jackson nodded, slouching just enough to sell the part. "Yeah, appreciate you having me." "No problem," the man said, waving him in. "I'm Logan, floor manager. Corporate's been sending people lately to align processes, whatever that means." It was my idea, Jackson thought, biting his tongue. Inside, the store looked exactly as he designed it. Golden lighting, vintage counters, the warm scent of butter and sugar that pulled people off sidewalks and into the door. But it was the back kitchen that caught him off guard. "She's been here since before I got in," Logan whispered, gesturing toward the woman. "That's Lena. She handles all the morning buns and artisan prep." Jackson studied her. The way she worked, she wasn't just good, she was world-class. Each roll was tight, precise, no wasted motion, no noise, just focus. It wasn't ambition he saw, it was survival. "What time does she get here?" "Always before 4:30, sometimes earlier. We don't ask anymore." Jackson nodded slowly. That's not normal, he thought. Not for someone on hourly wage, not for someone without a title. Throughout the morning, Jackson played the role, fumbling with mixers, pretending to forget flour ratios. Logan was helpful, patient, but Jackson's eyes kept drifting to Lena. Customers began lining up outside before 7, and by 7:30, people were asking for her pastries by name. Didn't look up once. Didn't speak to the others. Didn't even check the register when someone mentioned tips. Around 9 a.m., a younger worker named Zach tripped and sent an entire tray of raw dough crashing to the floor near Lena's station. "First rule of baking," Lena said softly, kneeling beside the mess. "Accidents happen." No scolding, no sighing, just a woman who cleaned up and moved on. When Jackson bent down to help, she raised a hand, still dusted with flour. "I've got this. You're new. Go learn the front counter." Her voice was calm but firm. She didn't say it out of ego. It was routine for her to do it all herself. Jackson was stunned. She had the presence of a leader, the skills of a master baker, but she wore no badge, no recognition, not even a hint of authority. That night, he sat on his motel bed, flipping through her employee file on his laptop. Hired 8 years ago. No promotions accepted, no vacations taken, always volunteering for extra shifts. Then he saw something buried in the payroll notes. Recurring deduction, Hamilton Financial. His heart sank. Hamilton was no credit union. They were predators, loan sharks dressed in corporate suits. Why was she paying them? And why had no one noticed? That night, Jackson didn't sleep. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a man about to uncover something that could shake his entire company. By the second day, Jackson had memorized Lena's rhythm. She arrived before anyone else. No music, no small talk, just hands moving, dough rising, ovens warming, sugar caramelizing. Jackson, still playing Evan, slipped into his apron quietly. Each morning, the same thing. Lena was already deep in her work, sleeves rolled, hair tied up, eyes fixed on the task ahead. There was something almost sacred about the way she handled the dough. Every fold was practiced, deliberate. Every tray she slid into the oven came out perfect, not just good, perfect. Golden spirals of cinnamon buns that glistened as if they were lacquered. He'd tasted pastries in Paris that didn't measure up. And yet, Lena never looked up. Never smiled. Never claimed credit. Jackson noticed something else. She never took a break. While the rest of the staff rotated through lunches and coffee runs, Lena kept moving. Folding, mixing, shaping, loading, cleaning. When one batch was done, she had already started the next. Like she was racing something. Or someone. At one point, when the rush finally slowed and Logan offered to cover so Lena could rest, she shook her head without even glancing up. "I'm good," she said, quietly, and kept going. Jackson approached Logan during lunch, keeping his tone casual. "So, Lena, she's something else, huh?" Logan gave a soft chuckle. "Yeah, she's the backbone of this place. The customers know it. Hell, we all know it." "She ever think about moving up? Supervising? Teaching?" "She's turned down every offer we've made," Logan replied, lowering his voice. "Corporate sent a 10-year anniversary recognition for her. She refused to let us hang it." Jackson blinked. "I signed off on that." "She said she didn't want attention," Logan continued. "Even flagged a payroll mistake once. We accidentally bumped her into the wrong pay tier. She called HR before anyone else noticed and made them fix it." That didn't sound like someone uninterested in money. That sounded like someone hiding from it. That night, Jackson used his corporate credentials to access HR's secure portal. He found Lena Hart's records again, and this time he didn't skim. The deduction to Hamilton Financial, monthly, recurring, unchanged for 7 years. He followed the trail. The payments were not for insurance, not for housing, not for support or savings. It was debt, specifically rescue loan repayment. He leaned back, heart sinking. Hamilton Financial specialized in last chance business loans. Their contracts were brutal. Compound interest, collateral seizures. Once they had you, it was almost impossible to get out. He'd seen it before. Small bakeries, food truck owners, people with dreams and no access to traditional banks. People like Lena. But she hadn't borrowed the money, that much was clear. The loan predated her employment. He scanned further and found a name in her emergency contact list. Jason Hart, same last name, probably her brother. He did a public record search. Jackson froze. Jason Hart had died. 7 years ago. Car crash, Interstate 5. Around the same time, Lena had started working at Golden Harvest. Quietly, anonymously, refusing raises, refusing promotions. Paying off a dead man's debt. By now, Jackson was pacing the motel floor. He opened the product development archives, specifically the pitch folders from 8 years ago, back when the Heritage sourdough line had first taken off. He'd been too busy managing investors then to oversee product submissions personally, but he knew the timing. He searched the name, Jason Hart. Nothing in acquisitions. Nothing in vendors. But in a hidden subfolder marked Unsolicited Submissions, there it was, a scanned PDF. Subject, Sourdough Formula Proposal. Name, Jason Hart. Status, Rejected, not aligned with brand direction. Jackson opened the file. His jaw tightened. It was the same formula. Ingredient ratios, fermentation schedules, flour blend, even the phrasing matched the formula Golden Harvest still uses today, the one earning them millions. Then he found a string of internal emails. From Connor Vance, VP of Product Development. Subject, Innovative Sourdough Formula Proposal for Rollout. Same week, same pitch, different name. Vance had taken Jason's work and passed it off as his own. And Jason, desperate, rejected, out of options, had taken a loan from Hamilton Financial to try again. The bakery burned. The loan remained. Jason? She carried it all. Jackson stared at the screen, nausea curling in his stomach. This wasn't just about a stolen recipe. This was about a woman paying for her brother's legacy with her life, her labor, and her silence. And no one knew. Not the staff, not the customers, not even the board. But he knew now, and the clock was ticking. The next morning, Jackson arrived earlier than usual. It was barely 4:15 a.m., but the kitchen lights were already on. Through the glass, Lena moved like a ghost in flour, rolling, brushing, folding, baking, as if rest was a luxury she'd forgotten. Jackson stood for a moment before entering. He knew everything now, not just about her skill, but about the stolen formula, the buried debt, the dead brother whose idea was keeping this company's lights on. And yet, Lena had no clue. She didn't know the buns she perfected came from a recipe Jason once dreamed would save their family business. She didn't know that same recipe had been plagiarized by a now-vanished executive who was paid a $250,000 bonus for his innovation. And she didn't know that the man beside her, pretending to be Evan the trainee, was actually the CEO of the very company that profited off it all. He stepped inside. "You're early," Lena said, not looking up. "Couldn't sleep," he replied, and he meant it. They worked in silence, the hum of mixers and clatter of pans filling the room. Lena's movements were slightly slower today, her back straighter but stiffer, her hands still precise but with a tremor that hadn't been there yesterday. "Rough night?" he asked casually. "Just the usual," she said. But it wasn't usual. Not for her. Not anymore. During his lunch break, Jackson made a quiet detour. The manager's office was open. The store's general manager, Monica, focused on fixing a delivery issue. He slipped inside when she stepped out to answer a call. The computer was unlocked. He pulled up Lena's file again, this time scanning for anything that might explain the Hamilton Financial link. He found one name, listed as next of kin, Jason Hart, confirmed now. He ran a deeper search through archived employee records and public business registries. Then he found it, an old business license for Hart and Hearth, a small artisan bakery started by Jason and Lena Hart nearly a decade ago. Just the two of them, family business, started from nothing. Then he cross-referenced the timeline. Loan application to Hamilton Financial, 2 months before the fire. Fire report, equipment failure, insurance denied. Car crash, Jason Hart, 1 month after the fire. It all aligned. The debt, the tragedy, the silence. Jason had died with a rejected formula and a business in ashes. Lena had walked into Golden Harvest days later, still smelling like smoke, asking for a job. Any job, and never left. Later that afternoon, Jackson requested to be reassigned for a supply run to a sister location. Not for flour, for answers. That location was managed by Caroline Madison, a regional supervisor who'd been around since the early days. If anyone remembered Lena's arrival, it was her. He kept his cover. "Evan from corporate, checking in on retention trends," he said casually. Caroline softened at the mention of Lena. "Of course I remember her," she said. "She came in right after her brother died. Poor girl." "You knew her brother?" "Not personally," Caroline said, "but she talked about him back then. Said they built a bakery together. He was the one who did the finances. She did the baking. Their morning buns were incredible even then." "What happened to the bakery?" "Hard times," Caroline sighed. "Jason took out a loan. The bank backed out. They found a private lender instead. Terrible terms. Then the fire happened. Insurance didn't cover a thing. Jason, well, he didn't last much longer." "And Lena?"
She walked in here like a ghost, just asked for a job. Wouldn't take time off, wouldn't even ask for special hours. Just said, "Tell me where you need hands." Jackson nodded. She never wanted sympathy. She wanted to work, to pay it off, to carry a dead man's promise. On the drive back, Jackson opened the archives again, this time the executive-only portal. He compared the formula Jason had submitted with the current heritage sourdough recipe. Identical. Ratios, proofing times, fermentation cycles, ingredient notes. Then the final confirmation, an internal memo authored by Connor Vance, claiming the idea as his own innovation and proposing it as a signature product line. Jackson's stomach turned. The same man who had received a six-figure bonus was now gone, vanished 5 years ago under unrelated misconduct allegations. No one questioned it. The board swept it under a rug so clean, not even dust remained. Until now. The next morning, Jackson arrived even earlier. He watched Lena kneading dough with aching wrists and bruised fingers. She didn't complain. She didn't flinch, but she was fading. He moved beside her quietly. "Can I ask something personal?" "Depends on the question," she replied without looking up. "The flame tattoo on your wrist," he said. "What does it mean?" She paused for the first time that morning. "It's to remember something I lost." "A bakery?" She froze. Her hands stopped mid-roll. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "How did you?" "Heart and Hearth," Jackson said quietly. "Your brother Jason's bakery." The rolling pin dropped from her hands and clattered onto the counter. Her eyes snapped to his, sharp with suspicion and fear. "Who are you?" Jackson exhaled, heart pounding. It was time. "No more lies," he said, reaching into his jacket. He unfolded a sheet of paper and slid it across the counter. Jason's original proposal, printed from the archive. He submitted this to Golden Harvest 8 years ago. Her eyes scanned it. She didn't breathe. "This is the recipe we've been using in every store since. This is the formula that built the Heritage Sourdough line." She looked up slowly. Her voice cracked. "That's impossible. Jason got a rejection letter. He died thinking he failed." Jackson met her eyes. "I'm not Evan. My name is Jackson Reeves. I'm the CEO of Golden Harvest." She didn't speak. Couldn't. She just stared at him, the betrayal unfolding in silence. And Jackson knew. This was just the beginning of the reckoning. Lena gripped the edge of the prep table like it might keep her upright. The words repeated in her head like a glitch in her head. CEO, recipe, Jason, stolen. She stared down at the printed formula, at her brother's handwriting, the same scribbled margins, the same ingredient notes she used every morning for the last 8 years. But this version wasn't from his notebook. This one had Golden Harvest's timestamp, internal memo, rejected. And yet, it was everywhere, on every shelf, in every store. Jackson stood across from her, still, quiet, letting it land. "I don't understand," Lena finally said. Her voice was low but shaking. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" "Because the formula wasn't just rejected, it was stolen," he said. "Our former VP, Connor Vance, took it from the unsolicited submission pile and pitched it to the board under his name. 6 months later, the Heritage Sourdough line launched. He walked away with bonuses. Jason walked away with nothing." She dropped onto a nearby stool, eyes wide, blinking too fast.
All this time, we thought he failed. He thought he failed. Her hands clenched together. He blamed himself. He took that loan because he thought he had to prove something. He thought the recipe didn't matter to anyone but us. Jackson pulled out another document and laid it beside the first, a breakdown of the Heritage Line's sales over the past 8 years. This product line has brought in $12.4 million. Conservative estimate. Your brother's formula built this company's second most profitable product. She looked at the numbers, then at him. Why didn't anyone say anything? Why didn't the board investigate? They never knew, Jackson admitted. The theft was buried. I didn't even know until 3 nights ago. Once I saw your name in the payroll files, I started digging. I've barely slept since. Her face was pale, but something else had crept in, anger, a quiet, steady kind. You've been watching me. Yes, you let me believe you were just a trainee. You let me work double shifts, let me stay late, let me haul sacks of flour on my back while you stood there pretending to learn how to fold dough. He didn't flinch. I did, he said, because I had to understand it. Not from the reports, not from the staff, from you. I needed to see what someone working under the weight of injustice looks like. She stood slowly. Her jaw was set now, her hands trembling, but her eyes hard. What happens now? She asked. Before he could answer, the back door swung open and Logan stepped inside, stopping short at the sight of them. His eyes darted from Jackson to Lena, then to the documents on the table. Evan? He asked carefully. Is everything okay? Jackson turned to face him, no longer slouched, no longer pretending. I need you to call Monica and ask her to come in right away. Then contact regional management and request a 9 a.m. emergency meeting. Tell them Jackson Reeves is calling it.
Logan blinked, then blinked again. Yes. The shock passed over Logan's face like thunder across water. Jackson turned back to Lena. In the meantime, we've got some calculations to finish. The next few hours were a blur. Monica arrived first, stunned into silence. Then regional managers. Then a few video-patched executives from neighboring districts. The conference room filled slowly, uneasily. They all wanted to know what warranted a crisis meeting before 9 a.m. By then, Jackson had printed everything. Jason's original submission, the memo Vance sent falsely claiming the formula, financial records from the Heritage Line, payroll deductions to Hamilton Financial, Lena's employee file. When the meeting started, Jackson stood at the head of the table. Lena sat beside him, still in her flour-dusted apron, hands folded tightly in her lap. On the wall behind him, a large screen displayed the title slide, Intellectual Property Breach, Heritage Sourdough Line. He didn't waste time. 8 years ago, this company's second most profitable product line was built on a formula submitted by Jason Hart, a local baker. He died believing his work was worthless, but it wasn't. It was stolen. Click. He showed the original proposal, time-stamped and verified. Then the internal formula used in stores. The ratios matched, the fermentation schedule matched, the flour composition matched. This is not a coincidence, Jackson said, voice steady. This is theft. Click. Compensation records for Connor Vance, over $250,000 in bonuses within 2 years of the product's launch. Click. An internal email from Vance to the board. Innovative new formula developed in-house. Jackson paused. Connor Vance left the company 5 years ago under unrelated allegations. But the product he took credit for? Still here. Still earning. And the rightful owner's sister? He gestured to Lena. She's been working in our kitchens for 8 years. No promotions, no recognition, and paying down the debt her brother took to build the very idea that made this company rich. There was a long silence. Then a voice over Zoom cut through. This is highly irregular, said Evelyn Granger, the board chairwoman. Going undercover without board approval.
accusing a former VP of IP theft. Jackson, we understand your passion, but this hasn't been. With all due respect, Evelyn, what's irregular is that someone who built the backbone of our revenue stream has been working herself into the ground while we profited off her silence. He clicked again. Golden Harvest's internal margins appeared on screen. 12.4 million in sales. No creator credit, no compensation, no ethics. Another board member, Franklin Doyle, leaned forward on video. What exactly are you proposing? Jackson didn't blink. 3 things. 1. Golden Harvest pays off Lena Hart's remaining debt to Hamilton Financial. 2. We issue retroactive compensation based on fair market value for the use of her brother's formula, $3.2 million. And 3. We appoint Lena as head of artisan product development with full creative control, executive-level salary, and profit sharing tied to the heritage line. The CFO, Stephen Langford, nearly choked. That's absurd. 3rd option, Jackson said, overriding him. I released this story with full documentation to Food and Culture Weekly. They're already interested. They won't hesitate to run it. The public will love to hear how Golden Harvest got its heritage through corporate plagiarism. A long, stunned silence. Then a voice, soft but firm, cut through the room. I'd like to say something, Lena said, and everyone turned. Every eye turned to her, but Lena didn't flinch. She didn't stand up, she didn't raise her voice. But the weight of 8 years, of quiet sacrifice, of early mornings and broken wrists, of watching someone else take credit while she made dough just to make rent, sat behind her words. For 8 years, she began, I've come in before the sun. I've stayed after closing. I've worked through every holiday and weekend, every birthday, every funeral. Her voice was calm, flat, but it held steel underneath. I've done it not because I wanted recognition or a raise or a promotion. I did it because I owed a debt, not just financial but personal. My brother gave everything he had to that formula. He believed in it more than he believed in himself. She turned toward the board members watching her through the video feed. I watched your customers smile over a product he perfected. I watched someone else get the credit, and I stayed silent because I thought it was the only way to survive. She paused, then added, but I'm done surviving. No one spoke. Even Langford, who'd been the first to object to Jackson's proposal, sat with his eyes downcast. Lena's voice steadied even more. I don't want millions. I want my brother's name on what he built. I want the debt he died trying to pay off gone. And I want your company, this company, to stop treating ideas like they're free to take. Her fingers curled over the edge of the table, white with tension. You preach artisan values in your branding, but you buried the name of the man who gave you the recipe. If this is the company you claim to be, then prove it. Silence swallowed the room. Finally, Evelyn Granger spoke again, her tone cooler now, slower. Miss Hart, would you allow the board 30 minutes to deliberate? Lena nodded. Of course. The screen went black. Jackson turned toward her. Are you okay? She exhaled slowly, her fingers shaking slightly as she folded them in her lap. I don't know, she admitted. But for the first time in years, I don't feel invisible. They waited in silence. Monica entered the room with coffee. Logan lingered in the doorway, watching as if afraid to breathe too loudly. Staff whispered outside the glass walls, unsure what was unfolding, but sensing something irreversible. 35 minutes later, the board call reconnected. Evelyn's face appeared first, composed but no longer dismissive. She cleared her throat. Every eye turned to her, but Lena didn't flinch. She didn't stand up, she didn't raise her voice. But the weight of 8 years, of quiet sacrifice, of early mornings and broken wrists, of watching someone else take credit while she made dough just to make rent, sat behind her words. For 8 years, she began, I've come in before the sun. I've stayed after closing.
I've worked through every holiday and weekend, every birthday, every funeral." Her voice was calm, flat, but it held steel underneath. "I've done it not because I wanted recognition, or a raise, or a promotion. I did it because I owed a debt, not just financial, but personal. My brother gave everything he had to that formula. He believed in it more than he believed in himself." She turned toward the board members watching her through the video feed. "I watched your customers smile over a product he perfected. I watched someone else get the credit, and I stayed silent because I thought it was the only way to survive." She paused, then added, "But I'm done surviving." No one spoke. Even Langford, who'd been the first to object to Jackson's proposal, sat with his eyes downcast. Lena's voice steadied even more. "I don't want millions. I want my brother's name on what he built. I want the debt he died trying to pay off gone. And I want your company, this company, to stop treating ideas like they're free to take." Her fingers curled over the edge of the table, white with tension. "You preach artisan values in your branding, but you buried the name of the man who gave you the recipe. If this is the company you claim to be, then prove it." Silence swallowed the room. Finally, Evelyn Granger spoke again, her tone cooler now, slower. "Miss Hart, would you allow the board 30 minutes to deliberate?" Lena nodded. "Of course." The screen went black. Jackson turned toward her. "Are you okay?" She exhaled slowly, her fingers shaking slightly as she folded them in her lap. "I don't know," she admitted, "but for the first time in years, I don't feel invisible." They waited in silence. Monica entered the room with coffee. Logan lingered in the doorway, watching as if afraid to breathe too loudly. Staff whispered outside the glass walls, unsure what was unfolding, but sensing something irreversible. 35 minutes later, the board call reconnected. Evelyn's face appeared first, composed but no longer dismissive. She cleared her throat. "After review and discussion with the board and legal counsel," she began, "we are prepared to issue a formal response." Jackson leaned back but said nothing. Golden Harvest acknowledges that the origin of the heritage sourdough formula traces back to a documented submission by Mr. Jason Hart. It is evident that his work was used without consent, credit, or compensation. This constitutes a breach of our intellectual property policy and ethical standards. Lena's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. Evelyn continued, her voice firmer now. "Effective immediately, the company will assume and settle Lena Hart's outstanding balance with Hamilton Financial. We will also issue a formal public acknowledgement of Jason Hart as the creator of the heritage sourdough formula, including signage, marketing, and packaging updates." Logan quietly whispered, "Damn." Evelyn wasn't done. "Furthermore, Lena Hart will be offered the role of head of artisan product development with executive-level compensation, creative control, and an annual profit-sharing arrangement retroactive to the original launch of the product line. Legal documents will be prepared and sent within 5 business days." Lena blinked, her jaw slightly slack. "You're serious?" she whispered. Evelyn nodded. "We are, and we apologize for the failure to investigate this sooner." The call ended. And for the first time since Jackson had walked into that bakery at 4:45 a.m., the room felt still. Logan whistled low. Holy hell. Jackson stood and gently pushed his chair back. He turned to Lena. "You okay?" he asked again. She nodded slowly. "I think so." He reached into a folder and handed her a draft of the offer letter. "Review it. Take your time. Bring a lawyer. Do whatever you need. There's no pressure." Lena took it with both hands like it weighed more than just paper. She looked up at him. "Why'd you do this?" Jackson didn't answer right away. He finally said, "Because I remember what it's like to owe more than you earn.
I remember sitting in a bank with a business plan and being handed a smile wrapped in 24% interest. I remember losing someone I loved and wondering if I failed them by not fighting harder. Then he looked her in the eyes, voice low, certain. But mostly because if we're running a company that rewards theft over truth, silence over courage, then I don't want my name on it. Lena didn't cry. She inhaled, slow and deep, and said softly, "Can I show you something?" He followed her back into the kitchen. The ovens were cooling, the light had softened. She led him to a drawer beneath her workstation, pulled out an old, worn notebook, edges browned with time, cover stained with flour and sugar. She opened it. The first page. Jason Hart, Batch Experiments, Morning Buns. Handwritten notes, ratios, notes like too dry, needs softer proof, try molasses swirl. Dozens of pages followed, scribbled in love, in obsession, in hope. "This is everything he ever tested," she said. Jackson ran a hand down the page. One line stood out, bolder than the others. Jason had underlined it twice. "Give credit, always, even if no one's watching." Lena closed the notebook gently. "I think he would have liked you," she said. Jackson's voice cracked when he answered, "I wish I'd met him." But deep down, he knew. Maybe he just had.
3 weeks later, the Seattle flagship store of Golden Harvest looked the same. Same golden glow from the lamps, same scent of cinnamon and sugar curling through the air like a welcome, same clatter of baking trays, mixing bowls, and half-whispered orders called from behind the counter. But something had changed, not just in the walls, in the people. Near the register, just beside the pastry display, a small bronze plaque had been installed. Simple, unassuming, but powerful. In honor of Jason Hart, whose recipe and resilience helped build this foundation, a true artisan, never forgotten. Lena passed it every morning. She didn't slow down to touch it, didn't weep, didn't light a candle or hang flowers. She just walked past it, spine a little straighter, steps a little firmer. Because his name was no longer hidden in a filing cabinet. It was out here now, in the light, where it belonged. She wore a new apron too, dark slate gray with her name stitched across the chest in deep gold thread. Lena Hart, Head of Artisan Product Development. Not just a title, not just a promotion. It was proof that creation mattered, that sacrifice had value, that someone finally saw her. She still came in at 5 a.m., not because she had to, not anymore. She had a team now, a full support staff, 2 junior bakers, a rotating assistant. She could have shown up at 8 and no one would have questioned it. But 5 a.m. was where she lived. It was where the quiet was, where the flowers settled and the ideas began. It was where she heard Jason's voice in the rustle of parchment, felt his hand in the curve of every spiral bun. Upstairs, Jackson Reeves stood behind the glass of the conference room, watching her. He did this most mornings now, not to supervise, not to audit, just to remember, to stay grounded in the heartbeat of the business. Monica entered quietly and handed him a cup of black coffee. "Press picked up the story," she said. "Food and Culture Weekly ran a whole spread. We're getting flooded with submissions now. Recipes from retired bakers, hobbyists, even a high school kid in Ohio." Jackson gave a tired but genuine smile. "Good." Monica studied him for a second, then said, "You didn't do all this just for Lena, did you?" He shook his head. "No. I did this for us." She waited, giving him space. "I built Golden Harvest on the idea that value comes from the people who create it. But somewhere along the way, the company grew big enough to take and get away with it. That's the moment I realized something dangerous." He turned to face her, voice low, certain. If a company becomes big enough to steal and silence, it's also big enough to collapse under the weight of its own hypocrisy. "I'm not here to run a brand anymore. I'm here to rebuild a promise." Downstairs, Lena was coaching 2 apprentices on a new seasonal bun, a twist on the classic, this time with honeyed figs and rosemary. One of the younger bakers looked up and asked shyly, "But what if someone steals this one too?" Lena turned toward the plaque. "They won't," she said. "But how do you know?" She looked toward the upstairs window where Jackson stood behind the glass, silent but present. Her voice was calm.
Because now someone's watching, and someone finally cares who gets credit. That night, in his office, Jackson sat alone with a letter. It had arrived in the mail, handwritten on aged paper, folded carefully between 2 pages of a notebook. It was the original formula, Jason's final version of the sourdough that had changed everything. Annotated, dated, signed. Alongside it was a note, just a few words scrawled in Lena's neat handwriting. "Don't forget why this matters. For the next Jason, L.H." Jackson read it twice, then a third time. And as the city lights shimmered against the glass walls, he didn't feel proud. He felt responsible. Because this was never just about a stolen recipe. It was about a system that quietly taught creators to stay silent and taught executives to take credit with clean hands and clean suits. Golden Harvest didn't just owe Lena a paycheck. It owed Jason his name. And it owed every future creator something more than a salary. It owed them dignity. It owed them fairness. It owed them the promise that someone would always be watching, and someone would care who gets the credit.